Finnish prosecutors handling the case of pro-Biafran agitator Simon Ekpa are seeking a 6-year prison sentence for him if found guilty. Simon Ekpa is standing trial on terrorism charges. He appeared in the Päijät-Häme District Court on Friday for a preparatory hearing on terrorism-related charges, according to a Finnish local news medium, Yle. The prosecutor reportedly cited substantial evidence of Simon Ekpa's digital communications and activities. "We have a great deal of evidence regarding this individual's online activity and communications," said State Prosecutor Samsa Hakala. The prosecution also acknowledged the challenges in gathering reliable information, noting that much of the suspected criminal activity occurred in Africa. In addition to terrorism-related accusations, the court is reviewing allegations of aggravated tax fraud and suspicions that Simon Ekpa may have ordered weapons for pro-Biafra groups. The Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, Simon Ekpa, appeared before the Päijät-Häme District Court in Finland on Friday, May 30, 2025, as the country's government commenced his terrorism trial. Recall that in November 2024, the Finnish government arrested Simon Ekpa on suspicion of terror-related activities, including incitement to violence and terrorism financing. He was accused of using social media to incite violence and causing unrest in the southeast region of Nigeria as part of his secessionist agitation for Biafra. According to the prosecutors, who are demanding a 6-year prison sentence for Simon Ekpa, his activities may constitute terrorism under Finnish law. "We have a great deal of evidence regarding this individual's online activity and communications," said State Prosecutor Samsa Hakala. During interrogations, Simon Ekpa denied ordering weapons for pro-Biafra groups and other allegations against him. Simon Ekpa is known for his affiliation with a faction of the indigenous people of Biafra, ipob, a separatist group agitating for the independence of Nigeria's southeast, a region that experienced a devastating civil war between 1967 and 1970. Simon Ekpa has also served as a local representative of Finland's Conservative National Coalition Party in Lahti, where he held a position on the city's Public Transport Committee. On a quiet Friday morning, the 30th of May in the year 2025, the Päijät-Häme District Court in Finland welcomed into its chambers a man whose name had long become a symbol of both defiance and controversy. That man was Simon Ekpa. He stood not merely as an accused, but as someone who, depending on which part of the world you ask, is either a revolutionary leader fighting for a dream or a dangerous agitator disrupting the peace of an entire region. But to understand why Finnish prosecutors are now asking the court to sentence Simon Ekpa to 6 years in prison if he is found guilty, one must step back and carefully unpack the chain of events that led to this legal moment. Simon Ekpa, a Nigerian-born Finnish citizen, is not just another political commentator. He is the Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, a government in exile based largely online and run from Europe. His rise to international notoriety has been driven almost entirely by his fierce support for the secession of southeastern Nigeria from the rest of the country. Through social media, live streams, video broadcasts, and carefully structured speeches, Simon Ekpa has become the loudest voice of a particular faction of the indigenous people of Biafra, a separatist group banned in Nigeria and viewed as a terrorist organization by the Nigerian government. While the indigenous people of Biafra has formally distanced itself from Simon Ekpa in recent years, accusing him of extremism and dividing the movement. His influence on the streets of cities like Onitsha, Aba, Enugu, Owerri, and Abakaliki remains deeply felt. For the people living in the southeastern region of Nigeria, Mondays became a symbol of this influence. Under what is called sit-at-home orders, Simon Ekpa would call on residents to abandon businesses, schools, transportation, and even personal appointments. At first, these orders were described by some as voluntary acts of civil disobedience meant to honor past Biafran leaders or to push the Nigerian state to release the imprisoned indigenous people of Biafra leader Nnamdi Kanu. But soon, fear replaced ideology. Shops that opened on Mondays were sometimes attacked. Buses that moved were burnt. People suspected of disobeying the orders were harassed or worse. The air of insecurity turned economic hubs into ghost towns. Simon Ekpa, from the comfort of Finland, was accused of pulling the strings through his daily online broadcasts. Back in Finland, the situation took a serious legal turn in November of the year 2024, when Finnish authorities arrested Simon Ekpa. The arrest came after months of monitoring and growing pressure from international observers, including the Nigerian government. He was arrested on suspicion of terrorism-related activities, including incitement to violence and the financing of terrorism. According to reports at the time, Finnish intelligence and law enforcement agencies had gathered what they believed to be digital evidence showing Simon Ekpa's deliberate use of social media platforms to provoke unrest in Nigeria. These pieces of evidence included online communications, audio messages, videos, and financial transactions believed to be connected to the violence in southeastern Nigeria. On the 30th of May in the year 2025, Simon Ekpa appeared before the Pajut Hame District Court for a preparatory hearing. The courtroom, filled with legal representatives, government observers and journalists, became the stage for one of Finland's most politically sensitive legal battles. The prosecution, led by State Prosecutor Sampsa Hakala, presented the Finnish state's argument. Sampsa Hakala stated that the authorities had collected a significant amount of digital evidence showing Simon Ekpa's involvement in activities that fall under the category of terrorism as defined by Finnish law. According to Sampsa Hakala, this includes incitement to commit violent acts, direct encouragement of public disorder, and possibly ordering the supply of weapons for armed groups loyal to the pro-Biafra agenda in Nigeria. Sampsa Hakala acknowledged that much of the alleged criminal activity occurred not on Finnish soil but in Africa, specifically Nigeria. This presents a legal challenge, as Finnish courts are typically not tasked with policing events that unfold halfway around the world. However, the Finnish state insists that if a Finnish citizen is using Finnish infrastructure, such as internet servers or financial systems, to commit or support acts that could be classified as terrorism abroad, then the Finnish legal system must intervene. The concept here is known as extraterritorial jurisdiction, and it allows countries to prosecute their citizens for crimes committed elsewhere, especially when those crimes have global consequences. Simon Ekpa has consistently denied the core accusations against him. He maintains that he never ordered the purchase or distribution of weapons for pro-Biafra groups. During his interrogations with Finnish authorities, he rejected the claim that he financed terrorism or encouraged the use of force. Instead, he says that his broadcasts are political statements protected by free speech. He argues that he is giving a voice to a people who have been marginalized, silenced, and victimized for generations. He sees himself as a modern freedom fighter, following in the footsteps of anti-colonial leaders from Africa's past. But prosecutors are not convinced. In addition to the terrorism-related charges, they have introduced further allegations against Simon Ekpa. These include accusations of aggravated tax fraud, a serious crime under Finnish law that implies deliberate and large-scale attempts to deceive the state's taxation system. Details of the tax fraud charges have not been made public in full, but they reportedly involve irregularities in his financial records, undeclared income potentially linked to donations or funding from Biafran supporters, and suspicious cross-border transactions. The inclusion of these charges paints a broader picture of a man who, in the eyes of Finnish prosecutors, may have been leading a politically controversial life while also engaging in financial misconduct. The request for a 6-year prison sentence if Simon Ekpa is found guilty is a strong statement from the Finnish state. It suggests that authorities believe the case goes beyond ordinary political activism. For comparison, Finnish sentencing standards for terrorism-related crimes can vary based on the level of harm caused, the intention behind the act, and whether weapons or organized groups are involved. Prosecutors believe that Simon Ekpa's online influence has directly resulted in chaos and deaths in southeastern Nigeria, making him responsible not just for speech, but for the consequences of that speech. Simon Ekpa's defense team is preparing a robust response. Their argument will likely center on freedom of expression, political persecution, and the lack of a clear connection between his statements and any specific violent act. They are expected to argue that Simon Ekpa is being targeted because of his views and his prominence in the Biafran struggle, not because he has committed any actual crimes under Finnish law. The defense will also likely challenge the admissibility and authenticity of some of the digital evidence, especially if it was obtained in or from Nigeria without Finnish legal oversight. This case raises complex questions about the limits of free speech, the global reach of online activism, and how Western legal systems should handle citizens who use their platforms to intervene in the political affairs of distant countries. For the Nigerian government, the trial is a rare moment of validation, a sign that international partners are finally taking seriously the damage caused by Simon Ekpa's broadcasts. For the Biafran movement, however, reactions are deeply divided. Some supporters of Biafra see Simon Ekpa as a traitor who hijacked a once united cause for personal gain and glory. Others view him as a fearless leader willing to speak truth to power when others have been silenced or imprisoned. It is also important to consider Simon Ekpa's political background in Finland. Long before he became the voice of the Biafran digital resistance, he was active in Finnish politics. He once served as a representative of Finland's Conservative National Coalition Party in the city of Lahti, where he held a seat on the local public transport committee. This role gave him legitimacy and visibility in Finnish civic life. His transition from a local political figure to an international secessionist agitator was swift, dramatic, and in many ways still puzzling to those who knew him in his Finnish context. As the trial progresses, the legal community in Finland is paying close attention. The outcome could set a precedent on how the country handles similar cases in the future. If Simon Ekpa is convicted and sentenced to prison, it could signal that Finland is willing to prosecute terrorism-related crimes, even when they involve activities far from its borders. On the other hand, if Simon Ekpa is acquitted, it could reinforce the principle that political speech, even when controversial or provocative, must be protected in democratic societies. The case is also being closely watched in diplomatic circles. The Nigerian government, which has long pushed for international recognition of its fight against separatism, is likely hoping for a conviction. At the same time, human rights groups are observing the proceedings to ensure that Simon Ekpa receives a fair trial and that his rights are not violated in the name of national or international security. Outside the courtroom, the narrative continues to unfold on multiple fronts. In Nigeria, tension remains high in the southeast, with periodic eruptions of violence and frequent clashes between security forces and groups suspected of being loyal to Simon Ekpa. The sit-at-home orders, although no longer as strictly followed as before, still carry an undertone of fear and uncertainty. Parents hesitate to send their children to school. Traders count their losses every Monday. Buses are parked and streets are empty. The echoes of Simon Ekpa's words, spoken thousands of kilometers away, still ripple across towns and villages in Nigeria's southeastern region. As the legal process moves forward, the stakes for all parties involved continue to rise. For Simon Ekpa, this is not just a battle for legal freedom, but for the credibility of his entire political mission. For the Finnish state, it is a test of its legal principles, its stance on terrorism, and its commitment to international justice. For Nigeria, it is a long-awaited response to years of digital warfare launched from abroad. And for the ordinary people affected by these power struggles, from the market women in Aba to the students in Enugu, it is a moment that might finally bring either accountability or even greater disillusionment. The next stages of the trial will involve more detailed presentations of evidence, expert testimonies, cross-examinations, and legal arguments from both sides. These proceedings are expected to continue for several months. Whatever the outcome, the case of Simon Ekpa will be remembered not just as a legal matter, but as a powerful example of how digital voices can travel across continents, stir unrest, inspire loyalty, and ultimately force modern democracies to confront questions that have no easy answers. As the court case of Simon Ekpa continues to unfold in the Päijät-Häme District Court of Finland, the legal drama stretches beyond the traditional expectations of a criminal trial. The case has come to embody a complex intersection of international politics, national security, human rights, freedom of speech, diaspora activism, and digital influence. While prosecutors press forward with their argument for a 6-year prison sentence, the world outside the courtroom watches with sharply contrasting emotions. Simon Ekpa, who once walked the streets of Lahti as a political figure involved in transportation policy, now stands in the center of a terrorism trial. This stark transition is one of the most remarkable aspects of his story. His journey from a Finnish political committee to a digital revolutionary claiming to lead a government in exile was not overnight. It was a calculated transformation, built on years of developing a strong media presence and mobilizing an emotionally charged narrative around the Biafran struggle. The secessionist movement known as Biafra has deep roots. The Biafran War, fought between 1967 and 1970, remains one of the most tragic and defining conflicts in Nigerian history. It was a brutal civil war marked by starvation, aerial bombardments, the deaths of millions, and lasting ethnic wounds. For decades after the war, the subject of Biafra remained taboo in Nigeria, treated more like a buried pain than an ongoing political question. But in the age of the internet, diaspora voices like Simon Ekpa's have pulled Biafra back into national consciousness, not just as history, but as a current demand. From his base in Finland, Simon Ekpa uses his platform to appeal to a generation that never experienced the civil war directly, but now feels its weight through poverty, political exclusion, and insecurity. Through daily video broadcasts, Simon Ekpa paints a picture of a homeland betrayed. He tells his followers that the Igbo people of southeastern Nigeria, alongside other ethnic groups in the old Biafran territory, have been politically marginalized, economically sabotaged, and culturally repressed. His language is emotional, assertive, and at times openly confrontational. He frequently calls out Nigerian leaders by name, accuses them of treason against their people, and encourages resistance, which, in his narrative, becomes a moral and spiritual obligation. These broadcasts are not just opinion pieces, they are strategy sessions, motivational speeches, and sometimes calls to action. The Finnish prosecutors argue that these online activities are not protected under freedom of speech because they directly incite violence and unrest. This is the end of our news update. Please click the icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.